Good morning, everyone. Thank you to my panelists as well. So, our theme is cybersecurity. I mean, as we are digitizing, IDs are becoming digital. We do know digital comes with lots of opportunities, but it comes with threats as well. So that is really our topic of discussion today in this panel. But maybe let me just get a word from my panelists from the different countries. I mean, what is it that, how do you think African countries are, African governments are prepared for the cybersecurity threats that are out there? And how do we get to the point where we ensure that there is trust in the digital systems that we are giving to our citizens?
A very good morning. It's an honor being here to discuss this a very relevant topic on cybersecurity. I'll try to share not just for Africa, but also for Tanzania. Preparedness is in multifaceted. We have from the legal framework, from the infrastructure, but from the people skills. We know in the cybersecurity, it is clear that the weakest link is the human. Now, for the case of Tanzania, we have several aspects in the legal framework that guides on how we manage cybersecurity as a country. We have ranging from the Cybercrime Management an act, but also on the Data Protection and Electronic Transaction Act that safeguards those aspects. But also in the aspect of e-government, we have the e-government act, which specifically has provisions on cybersecurity management in government systems. In the infrastructure, we have varying degrees, but in the case of Tanzania, we know we are not an island. We are part of the global network connectivity. Our preparedness ranges from the institutional setup in form of the different arrangements that we have put in place to safeguard our cyberspace at the national level, at the government level, but also at the individual institution level, then going down to individual persons level. But if I were to sum up the level of preparedness, I believe we still have a lot of areas that we need to work on as to have a good cyber hygiene or security posture where we can say we are at par with the rest of the world. And that is alluded to many different factors, including, I think on the opening day, His Excellency the President highlighted on the need for latest technologies. Now, we know part of the contributory factors to cyber threats is the known vulnerabilities in the technologies that are being used, and partly are contributed to how aging the technology are. When you have the latest technology coming in many cases you'll find there are known vulnerabilities in the old technologies. Now, owing to financial constraints, among others, you'll find there are still a lot of infrastructure that runs on outdated technologies, and that is one of the vulnerable areas that can cause weaknesses in cyber preparedness in many of African countries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bom dia, sou Adilson Rodrigues, de Cabo Verde. I will speak in Portuguese. Para a África, temos algumas ameaças que precisam ser mitigadas desde direitos. A primeira ameaça é a vontade política. O poder legislativo, o poder executivo, o poder decisivo e o poder financeiro. Basta querer e que consigamos fazer. Foram aqui apresentadas, desde o primeiro dia da sessão, um conjunto de problemas que temos em África, okay? Que é de senso comum em todos os países. Problema com energia, okay? Não temos cobertura de energia em todas as regiões do continente ou do país. Temos constante blackout de energia em vários países africanos. Entretanto, somos o continente mais quente, provavelmente temos mais energia solar para mitigar esse risco. A questão de conectividade também foi aqui abordada. Não temos cobertura de, desculpe, não temos cobertura de conectividade para todo o país ou para toda a região. Conectividade entre países africanos normalmente passa sempre por continente terceiro. Se Cabo Verde quer comunicar com Zâmbia, provavelmente a comunicação sai de Cabo Verde, passa por Portugal, Reino Unido, até chegar a Zâmbia. Então, temos essa problema de conectividade. A nível de tecnologia, questão de soberania tecnológica. Em África, praticamente não produzimos tecnologia, não produzimos hardware, não produzimos equipamentos, não produzimos a grande maioria de software que utilizamos. E hoje, com a questão de geopolítica, facilmente podemos ter problema na cadeia de fornecimento desses produtos. A outra questão que foi aqui também abordada é a questão de identidade digital. Obviamente que não podemos estar a falar de transformação digital ou do cyberespaço ou de cibersegurança no cyberespaço sem saber quem é quem, sem garantir a identidade digital para todos, garantir a inclusividade nessa identidade digital, garantir a acessibilidade para todos, independentemente da dispersão geográfica, independentemente de grupos éticos ou faixa etária. Okay? E outra questão pertinente é a questão de literacia e literacia digital, que também não deixa de ser uma ameaça dentro da África. Como os governos podem tornar-se mais seguros ou garantir a cibersegurança? Obviamente, mitigando todas essas ameaças. A União Africana preparou uma convenção, não sei se estão a par da Convenção de Malabo ou Convenção da União Africana, que define alguns padrões para a proteção de dados pessoais, comércio eletrónico, assinatura digital e cibersegurança, combate ao cybercrime, que deve ser aderido por todos, principalmente dentro do continente. Até o momento aderiram, acho que é 15 países, para definirmos um padrão comum dessa segurança, principalmente para garantir cooperação, e sabendo que cibersegurança e cybercrime normalmente é transfronteiriço. Okay. É isso.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the National Commissioner, CEO of the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, I'm greeting everyone, and he sends his regards. We also like to express our sincere gratitude to the Republic of Zambia for hosting us and African Brains for organizing this amazing, much-needed and timely conference. So I would answer your question in very short terms. I would focus more on what is going on in Nigeria. As we all know, Nigeria is a country that has seriously embraced digitization, but as we continue to expand and accelerate in that sense, the cybersecurity threats and risks continue to increase. So we have taken a three-pronged approach, and the first one being legal framework. Currently, we have the Cybercrime Amendment Act of 2024, and this is an act that has amended the initial act of 2015. And what we have done there is that we have now identified certain cyber threats, such as ransomware attacks, phishing, and also threats to critical national infrastructure. And then we have also now classified these acts with their offenses as well. So this strong legal framework provides a means for the government and enforcement agencies to be able to investigate cyber attacks and also take strong enforcement actions that are necessary to actually address these particular attacks. The second approach that we have taken is a national coordination approach. So generally in Nigeria, cybersecurity is being managed by the Office of the National Security Advisor. But then you have agencies such as the National Information Technology Development Agency, that's NITSDA, and also some other government agencies that are the ones that implement it, but the Office of the NSA coordinates it. And what that office has done now is that they have now identified certain key networks as critical national infrastructure, mainly in the energy sector, in the telecommunications sector, and the health sector as well. And this particular information has now been guarded as something that should be given high priority and should be securely securely managed to ensure that it doesn't suffer from any cybersecurity threats or risks. In addition to this, there is now a computer emergency resource team that has also been created so that when there are cybersecurity attacks, you have certain key departments within certain key agencies that work together to be able to ensure that they're able to curb the particular attack, address it head on, and also take enforcement actions when necessary. And then the third approach is now the talent base. As we go into this digital age, we need to ensure that as much as we have a lot of young people, we should be harnessing their talents in the cyber security space. So you have our ministry, that's the Ministry of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, that have come up with certain initiatives to train young people on cybersecurity, technology, and data protection. And one of them is the 3MTT initiative, which aims to train 3 million Nigerians within the space of 5 years on certain technical skills. And as at today, over 390,000 people have been trained, and not just being trained, they're now being placed within certain key partner organizations that will give them the opportunity to actually put what they have learned into practice. There are other initiatives that are being done by NITDA as well, and also the Office of the National Security Advisor in relation to training talent on cybersecurity. So I would say that we are not there yet, but there is significant progress that is being made, and as long as we continue with this, we would get to the stage where we will say that we are cybersecurity ready and ready to address any threats that may occur when, as we go along in the digital age. Thank you.
Oui, bonjour à tous. Pour ce qui concerne la République démocratique du Congo, nous avons toujours pensé que les aspects de résilience et de cybersécurité passaient par 3 axes principaux qu'il fallait considérer. Le premier, c'était l'axe organisationnel. Il faut mettre en place une organisation, que ce soit par des structures, par des politiques, par un certain nombre de textes qui doivent être mis en place pour pouvoir garantir à la fois la résilience et la cybersécurité des données qui doivent être sécurisées dans le pays. Dans le deuxième aspect, c'est l'aspect des infrastructures. On sait que c'est un grand challenge en Afrique, puisque nous avons beaucoup de problèmes de mise en place d'infrastructures, comme des data centers, de par les challenges qui ont été cités un peu plus tôt, comme l'accès à l'électricité, qui empêche de construire des infrastructures comme les data centers. Et le troisième aspect, c'est les personnes, parce que tous les efforts que l'on peut faire, si aucun effort est fait pour s'assurer qu'on a des populations qui sont conscientes des enjeux qu'il y a dans le cyberespace, qui sont conscients des risques auxquels on fait face dans le cyberespace, tous les efforts que nous ferons n'auront pas forcément les résultats que l'on attend. En RDC, sur tous ces aspects, des efforts ont été faits. Je pense qu'en matière d'organisation, je pense que depuis 2022, si je ne me trompe, nous avons adopté plusieurs textes ont été produits. Le premier étant la stratégie nationale de cybersécurité qui permettait de mettre en avant un certain nombre d'actions critiques qui devaient être faites, qui reconnaissait l'existence de certaines activités critiques et sensibles pour le développement de notre pays qu'il fallait sécuriser. Et le deuxième texte est un texte beaucoup plus général et un texte légal qui est la stratégie, le code du numérique, qui est le document qui a été mis en place par le gouvernement de notre pays, ratifié par son Excellence Monsieur le Président de la République, pour pouvoir mettre un cadre à la fois aux aspects numériques et aux aspects de la cybersécurité. Il est clair aussi que dans les actions qui sont menées, il y a, je pense que depuis cette année, le plan national de cyber-résilience qui a été mis en place pour s'assurer justement qu'au niveau des infrastructures critiques, les activités qu'on considère les plus sensibles pour la continuité et la résilience dans notre pays, qu'un ensemble de standards soit en place et implémenté par ces différentes industries dans les différents secteurs d'activité, qu'un standard soit mis en place pour pouvoir garantir que quels que soient les événements qui puissent arriver, ces structures telles que par exemple le secteur de l'énergie, le secteur financier, le secteur des télécommunications, que ces secteurs puissent résister à la fois aux attaques, mais aussi aux différents incidents qui peuvent impacter leurs activités. Donc, en termes d'infrastructure, je pense que je crois que depuis cette année, l'année passée, je crois qu'il y a cette année, et puis il y en a un autre qui va se mettre en place d'ici là. Il y a déjà au moins 2 data centers qui ont été mis en place dans le pays pour pouvoir garantir qu'à la fois, en termes de protection des données, les données, parce que notre loi demande que les données des citoyens congolais puissent être hébergées dans des espaces souverains, que ces données-là soient hébergées au niveau du pays. Le troisième aspect, c'est l'aspect humain. On en a beaucoup parlé ici. Et au niveau de la RDC, on est bien conscient que, comme je l'ai dit un peu plus tôt, quels que soient les efforts que nous faisons, si l'humain n'est pas mis au centre, si l'humain n'est pas impliqué dès le départ dans les aspects de cybersécurité, le challenge va être un peu plus compliqué. C'est pour ça aussi, cette année, nous avons initié au fait au niveau de tous les secteurs, autour de toutes les activités critiques, mais principalement autour des structures publiques, des institutions publiques, une grande campagne de sensibilisation pour pouvoir alerter les différents fonctionnaires, les différentes populations aux enjeux et aux risques au fait dans le cyberespace. Et nous partons du principe que si nous avons au fait au niveau de l'administration des populations qui sont conscientes des risques qu'il peut y avoir à la fois sur les différents systèmes qui sont mis en place, mais aussi sur les enjeux de la protection des données, je pense que quelles que soient les structures que nous allons mettre, il y a quand même une grande chance, vu que nous aurons des populations sensibilisées, que les mesures pour pouvoir garantir en fait la sécurité et la protection des données soient en place. Donc globalement, par rapport à ces sujets-là, c'est des actions que nous avons menées. Nous pensons qu'on peut faire plus, comme a dit mon collègue tout à l'heure, c'est que effectivement, d'un point de vue continental, pour pas dire africain, des efforts doivent être mis. Par exemple, il a parlé de 15 pays seulement qui ont adhéré à la convention de Malabo. Nous estimons en RDC qu'on peut faire plus et que beaucoup plus peuvent adhérer justement à des initiatives comme ça, et qu'en fait, au niveau africain, des efforts aussi panafricains, parce que c'est vrai que nous avons des problèmes de connectivité qui ont été soulevés, mais je pense qu'il y a quand même des efforts, des synergies qui peuvent être mis en place pour pouvoir tacler tous les challenges auxquels nous faisons face, à la fois sur les problématiques de résilience ainsi que sur les problématiques de cybersécurité. Merci.
Merci. Pour le cadre du Bénin, il faut dire que le vrai plan de transformation digitale de Bénin a commencé en 2016. Donc du coup, un an après, en 2017, on a décidé de mettre en place une agence spécialisée dans la sécurité informatique, l'ANSI, qui a habité en son sein en fait le Centre national d'alerte et de réponse d'incidents. Donc pendant tout le parcours jusqu'à cette année, ce centre nous a permis de détecter, de répondre à certaines vulnérabilités qu'on a pu constater. En termes de gouvernance, il faut dire que notre stratégie cyber, en fait, c'est réparti en 3 grands points. Le premier, c'est de dire, en fait, c'est un triptyque indissociable, une gouvernance forte. On a mis en place l'agence, on a mis en place les politiques, notamment la politique de sécurité des systèmes d'information de l'État. D'accord ? Donc cette politique-là, elle est déclinée après au niveau des institutions gouvernementales. On a mis en place une politique de protection des infrastructures d'information critiques. Donc avant de faire ça, qu'est-ce qu'on a fait ? On a cartographié tous les opérateurs d'infrastructures d'information critiques. Donc ces 40 structures prioritaires qu'on a retrouvées, donc on les a dotées de RSSI. Donc du coup, ces RSSI sont là pour surveiller, voilà, pour gérer cet environnement cyber-là et s'adosser à leur PSSI. Il faut dire que cette année, on a sorti un rapport de vulnérabilité. On a regardé de 2021 à 2024 l'ensemble des vulnérabilités qui ont impacté le Bénin à travers ces structures gouvernementales. Donc du coup, on a pu énumérer, le rapport est sorti, il est sur notre site web, 878 vulnérabilités. Donc de 2021 à 2024, on a eu un bond de, on va dire, de 200 vulnérabilités. Et quand on regarde en fait les natures de ces vulnérabilités-là, on a plus en fait de vulnérabilités sur tout ce qui est broken access control. Donc le plus bas en termes de vulnérabilité, c'est tout ce qui est SQL injection. Donc je pense qu'aujourd'hui, nous avons déjà pris certaines mesures pour notamment doter les RSSI de ces structures prioritaires-là pour adresser ces points et les former sur des outils aussi d'analyse des risques. Tout récemment, on les a formés sur la méthode IBIOS, Risk Manager. Donc ces derniers sont à même aujourd'hui on va dire, d'anticiper, de gérer les risques cyber qui interviennent quotidiennement dans l'activité. Donc voilà un peu en fait comment aujourd'hui le Bénin s'est préparé de façon au niveau de sa stratégie de cybersécurité.
Thank you for that. I think maybe let me go on to Tanzania. Now, you have the cybersecurity strategy 2022 to 2027. I think it's laid out a number of objectives, which is strengthening the legal frameworks, building the workforce capacity, and increasing threat awareness. Now, what steps are you taking to really operationalize this strategy? But in that as well, noting that there may be compliance issues, how do you balance compliance and innovation in the country around cybersecurity?
Thank you. It's true, we have the government cybersecurity strategy where a number of interventions have been actually strategized to help ensure a proper cyber hygiene in the government. Yes, I come from the government authority. The strategy has laid out 3 key stakeholders in its implementation. We have our Public Service Management Ministry, which is the overall in charge in drafting and monitoring the strategy implementation. We have the authority that I come from, which is at the center of coordinating its implementation, and we have individual public institutions, the MDAs, that actually do the day-to-day implementation. With specific to the strategy, some interventions have been done and continue to be done because it is running to 2027. To be specific, it alluded to legal framework. As I said earlier, we have set up a number of pieces of legislations that mandates different parts on what they should do to protect their infrastructure and systems against cyber attacks. And on the institutional setup, we have the National SAT, Computer Imagery Response Team, and our communication regulator, and it is overall in charge looking at the cyber management across the government, across the country. And below it, the institution that I'm in, we run the e-Government Security Operations Center as the overall coordinator of cybersecurity strategy implementation across the government. And what do we do? With regard to skills, first, we work with the Ministry of Public Service, and it's by law that every institution must have a fully staffed an ICT department, but now we have issued guidelines that we enforce that there has to be a dedicated person or team responsible for cybersecurity coordination in each public institution. And at the authority, we maintain a database of them, and we treat them as the focal persons in case there is a cyber incident or we have a specific knowledge we have to disseminate across the government. So we train them annually. We make sure staff at the authority are well trained in and outside the country, and now they are used to roll out that particular skills or capacity to the security champions in each public institution. So they are guaranteed at least 2 technical training every year from the authority, in addition to what their institutions are supposed to be providing as part of the capacity building. And to make sure it is institutionalized in each institution, we run 2 sessions every year. One session which brings over 1,500 people in one roof, and key to that is we have the permanent secretaries and chief executive officers of all the government agencies, and where we emphasize on what are the focus areas. Cybersecurity is always at the top. And we normally have a closed session where we take through the CEOs on what they should consider. The objective is not for them to be tech savvy or aware of technical issues with cybersecurity, but to know that it's a priority area and ensure we have a budget and they can allocate it and make sure their cybersecurity team is well trained. And from the authority, what we do as part of compliance monitoring, we do the assessment to see the implementation of cybersecurity strategy at the institutions level, but we also use internal auditors at the institution level who also checks on compliance, and our Controller and Auditor General covers that as part of the annual compliance that he does. With also regard to end users, we are working with the Ministry of Public Service. We have developed a platform already where a mandatory level of cybersecurity awareness will be offered, and there will be a testing through the system every year to make sure all the public servants who access public government systems have that level of cybersecurity awareness before they can be granted access to some specific systems. We believe that will actually trickle down to the level of individuals, because as I said, we may be very secure at the infrastructure technology level, but as the trend we are seeing, many of the attacks normally come through the users, as through phishing, social engineering. That's where you have your insiders becoming part of the threats to your cyber infrastructure. On balancing the compliance with innovation, mainly we run through sandboxes, because we know if an innovator has to go through all the regulatory requirements, it's difficult to innovate. As the authority we run, e-government authority, we run the e-government Research, Innovation and Development Center. There, a person with an idea, whether from the academia or even from the street, can go there and do anything and will not be compelled to follow the specific prescribed legal and regulatory requirements until when that product is now ready, proven ready to go to the production for use. That's where the checks come in. But it will have matured and gone through. That is the same for the finance sector, where the central bank have launched the FinTech Regulatory Sandbox, where FinTech innovators are able to practice in a regulated environment, actually almost everything for a prolonged period of time, and until when it is proved that it is able to work, they will be now required to go through the regulatory requirements for it to be in production. The same works for our banks. One of the big banks, the NMB in Tanzania, has a regulatory sandbox where those particular innovations are able to be tested. Our telecom regulator has issued free shortcodes, USSD, and others to innovators that they can use to do their innovation testing prior to being required to comply with the existing regulatory. That's exactly what we are trying to push ahead to make sure the regulatory framework doesn't stifle innovation in the country. Thank you.
Let me move over to the Democratic Republic of Congo around your digital code. And we know that the provisions of it are around protection of personal data. Now, what is it that you're doing to make sure that the relevant decrees that need to be implemented are issued timely, and how do you ensure that there is enough staffing and resources to carry out the mandates effectively?
Je pense que sur les lois comme la protection des données, nous avons au niveau déjà, parce que lorsque le Code du numérique a été promulgué, il a mis en place un certain nombre de fondations sur lesquelles justement des activités comme la protection des données doivent être mises en place. Et parmi ces structures, il y a l'Agence pour la protection des données, qui aujourd'hui, dans les rôles, a été donné à une autorité qui permet, qui est, on va le dire de manière pragmatique, assez opérationnelle, et qui doit faire ce travail à pouvoir faire évoluer les éléments de protection de données. Il y a des efforts qui avaient quand même été faits avant 2023. Je crois que c'était via la loi des télécoms qui a été promulguée en 2018, où déjà à l'époque on faisait des efforts pour pouvoir s'assurer qu'au niveau des télécoms, même si au niveau du secteur financier, il y a aussi des efforts qui ont été faits pour pouvoir garantir que les données à la fois des clients en fait dans ces secteurs d'activité soient protégées. On est conscient qu'effectivement en termes d'arsenal réglementaire ou d'arsenal légaux, il y a encore beaucoup de travail à faire. Il y a un certain nombre de lois qui sont en train d'être mises en place pour pouvoir préciser les éléments autour de la cybersécurité, autour des principes tels que les organismes d'importance vitale, autour de principes tels que la protection des données, non seulement de manière en fonction des industries, mais aussi de manière globale en fait, dans la prise en compte des éléments de la protection des données pour assurer que les données des Congolais soient protégées où qu'ils soient. Comme on l'a dit, il y a des principes qui ont été mis en place en fait, qu'il faut maintenant préciser et décliner en, fait, en des actions qu'il faut mener. Il y a un certain nombre de lois sur lesquelles nous devons travailler. Mais nous pensons, et c'est ce que nous disions tout à l'heure, nous pensons qu'il y a un certain nombre d'autres actions qui ne sont pas directement liées à des secteurs de manière spécifique à la protection des données, mais qui sont liées d'une manière beaucoup plus générale à la maturité, comment je vais dire ça, à la prise de conscience des enjeux et des risques qu'il peut y avoir, à la fois à l'utilisation des données, que ce soit des clients ou des Congolais dans le cadre du travail, mais aussi par un certain nombre d'actions que nous avons mis autour du plan national de cyber-résilience pour s'assurer au fait que les comportements, les attitudes, les procédures et tout ce qui sont mis en place intègrent au fait nativement, pas forcément qu'il y ait un élément de sécurité à côté, mais qu'il intègre nativement des aspects tels que la protection des données, qu'il intègre nativement aussi des aspects tels que la prise en compte de la protection des infrastructures critiques. Et aussi en termes d'actions supplémentaires, étendre en fait toutes les actions en fait, de sensibilisation, comme nous l'avons dit un peu plus tôt, des actions de sensibilisation autour de tout ce qui tourne un peu autour du cyberespace en général, mais aussi à des éléments plus spécifiques tels que la protection des données, tels que la gestion des risques, tels que le renforcement de capacité des acteurs, en fait, des acteurs qui œuvrent autour de la cybersécurité et de la protection des données. Il y a effectivement, et pour un peu résumer tout mon propos, il y a effectivement un certain nombre d'éléments que nous devons faire, enrichir en fait notre arsenal juridique autour de ces aspects-là, et il y a un certain nombre d'actions qui ont déjà commencé à être menées. Nous espérons d'ici la fin de l'année voir ces actions commencer à porter des fruits.
Now, for NOSI in Cabo Verde, I mean, you have the data protection law as well. And how do you ensure that digital identity in e-government is actually compliant? And what do you see as the main challenges in enforcement?
Assim, a identidade digital é baseada na informação de dados pessoais do cidadão, tanto biográfico como biométrico. Em Cabo Verde, criamos a legislação de proteção de dados pessoais em 2001. Depois, atualizamos recentemente em 2021 e foi criada a Agência de Proteção de Dados Pessoais em 2015. E essa agência tem a responsabilidade de garantir o cumprimento dessa legislação e de garantir alguma fiscalização. Então, para qualquer responsável para tratamento de dados, é necessário cumprir as obrigações dessa legislação, que são, normalmente, primeiro, notificar a Agência de Proteção de Dados Pessoais dos dados que estão a ser tratados. Que tipo de dados, qual é a finalidade, com quem a entidade pretende interconectar esses dados e que medidas de segurança essa entidade responsável garante na proteção dessas informações. Depois, é necessário garantir os direitos do próprio titular. A questão de privacidade tem de estar devidamente e claro salvo a repetição, que dados serão recolhidos, qual é a finalidade, tem de estar devidamente claro para o titular dos dados e garantir o seu consentimento. O titular tem direito ao acesso, tem direito a aceder à sua informação, tem direito à alteração, tem direito à oposição, tem direito a pagamento ou esquecimento. Então, todos esses direitos devem ser garantidos também pela entidade responsável pelo tratamento. Com a atualização da legislação em 2021, foi introduzido um capítulo sobre notificar tanto o titular dos dados como a agência de proteção de dados pessoais sobre qualquer que for violação sobre esses dados, qualquer que for uso indevido. Okay? Então, nós como nós, que somos o braço operacional tecnológico do governo, obviamente que temos implementado todas as questões, todos os mecanismos ou controlos tecnológicos para permitir a proteção dos dados em uso, em trânsito e em armazenamento. É isso que temos garantido, através, obviamente, do primeiro estabelecimento de uma infraestrutura de PKI robusta para garantir a confiança nessa identidade digital, depois o estabelecimento de uma estrutura de cibersegurança interna, baseada, obviamente, políticas e práticas que definem comportamentos, tecnologias de ponta para proteção adequada e, o último, mas não menos importante, adequado treinamento e consciencialização tanto do cidadão comum como do utilizador técnico e profissional. É isso que temos vindo a fazer.
I think for Nigeria as well, around the National Data Protection Act that's in place now, what are the biggest regulatory challenges that you face across both public and private sector? But also, how do you ensure that the global big tech actually complies with the Act? How do you ensure that the local big and small tech also complies with the Act without really having to balance innovation as well that needs to come from the local sector?
Thank you very much for that interesting question. So I'll start with the challenges and then I'll move to how we address and regulate big tech companies. So the first challenge that we have is awareness, and that's something that has to do with the sort of nature of Nigeria. If you look at Nigeria, and I think sort of to an extent Africa, and I'm saying this when we compare it with Europe, data protection is quite nascent in Nigeria. And because of that, there's not an in-depth embedded culture of that in Nigeria. So as a result of this, at the Commission, we have a mandate to ensure that we are training people on data protection, we are educating the whole public on data protection, and we're also ensuring compliance and enforcement as well. So it's a very huge mandate. And when you think of the numbers in Nigeria, we have over 230 million data subjects. We have over 774 local governments. We have 36 states, and then if you now include FCT, that you can say that's 37, but FCT is not a state, but it's a division. So we have so many people that we at the Commission, as a new Commission, have that mandate to actually manage and all of that. But before I go ahead, I just wanted to say that the Nigeria Data Protection Commission is the regulatory body regulating the protection of personal data. We have two main regulatory frameworks that actually govern our mandate. The first one is the Nigeria Data Protection Act, which regulates personal data protection in Nigeria, and the second one being a recently issued directive. It's called the Nigerian Data Protection Act, General Application and Implementation Directive. And for the people here that generally deal with the GDPR, it's very similar to it in the sense that if you look at the GDPR, you have your articles and then you have your recitals that give you further information, directives on the articles in the GDPR. So that's what guide is for us. So we have provided a document that gives further directives on express provisions in the main act. So I'll go back to awareness now. So that's one of our major challenges, because if people don't really know about the act, if they don't know about the commission, the problem is that you would have problems with companies actually complying with the law. You would also have problems with people even knowing what rights they have under the law, and based on that, they wouldn't even enforce it. So that's a major problem. And how we have decided to solve this problem is to carry out various initiatives. As at last year, we carried out over 100 programs just trying to educate and train people. And one of the sectors that we really focused on was the public sector. There's something that we're doing now called, there was a program we took on last year called the Responsible Data Management course, where it's a course that you take virtually over the self-paced, and within like 3 to 4 days you will be done. But it was focused on public servants, and based on that, we were able to train 10,000 public servants in the Nigerian civil service. And it's one of the reasons why when we started, we had the compliance rate of 4% in the public sector. But now that has arisen to 19%. So those are one of the initiatives that we are taking on. We are also actually even working with big tech companies at times to launch national campaign on raising awareness and education on data protection. So that's for awareness. The next challenge that we have found is low level of digital literacy. So we noticed that across mostly the rural sectors, a lot of people don't even know about data protection. And even in the urban sector as well, people don't even know about data protection and how to protect their data. So we have come up with various initiatives to curb this problem. The first one being something we called a Virtual Privacy Academy, which we worked on with a private sector body, and it's a 1 hour learning experience where we have used, so I don't know if you know about Nollywood, but the same way you have Bollywood and the same way you have Hollywood, we have Nollywood in Nigeria. And I would say that we're actually doing quite well, because I have spoken to some Zambians that have told me how much they love Nollywood, and they even know some actresses more than I do, I'm being a Nigerian. So what we then did is that we realized that, okay, people love Nollywood. So we then used Nollywood to come up with training materials to be able to train people on data protection. And that way, it makes the training relatable. You're able to connect it with your daily life. And that has really helped to break down data protection concepts to people and increase digital literacy in Nigeria. The next step that we then took is we realized that in Nigeria, we have over 500,000 companies that are processing personal data. And under the law, they are all supposed to have a data protection officer. But when we first started, we had less than 5,000 DPOs in Nigeria. So when you look at that gap, 500,000, 5,000, how do we close that gap? There's already that huge skill gap. So we came up with a national certification program for data protection officers, where we came up with a committee of people in the academics that are data protection experts, people in the private sector, people in the public sector, and also people in international development partners and international tech bodies that are very well versed and skilled in data protection. And we came up with a committee and came up with a course model of over 10 courses on data protection. The first pilot of that was run at the beginning of this year, and we were able to train over 438 data protection officers. Now we are now taking that training into the private sector, in the sense that we have something called data protection compliance organizations, where we license private companies to carry out compliance services on the commission's behalf. So audit firms, IT firms, legal firms can actually apply to the commission. If you meet our certain requirements, we give you a license and you carry out compliance services. So now those DPCOs are now providing trainings based on the model that we came up with on data protection. And the ripple effect of that is that you then get more data protection officers in Nigeria, and you're able to now ensure that that obligation to have a DPO in your company is complied with, and then we're increasing the level of compliance within both the public sector and the private sector. Another initiative that we have taken is we realized that, okay, if we really want to have this culture of data protection in Nigeria, if we want it embedded, we need to also start from the young minds as well. They need to understand what it is. And a recent survey showed that I think over 80% of Nigerian youths are online regularly. So if you really think about it, the data protection laws are really to protect them more so than the other people. They are to protect everyone, but I think you probably get what I'm saying. So we said, okay, if we don't train them, how do we ensure that they have a safe experience online? So we have now come up with an initiative called Data Privacy Clubs within Nigerian universities, where you have clubs that are established just to train university students on data protection. As at date, we have 5 that we have now established in major universities in Nigeria. The key is to establish this within the next 4 to 5 years in all major universities in Nigeria, so that from their young mind and age, they already understand what data protection is, and they can take this into the employment workforce. So that's for low level of digital literacy. The next challenge that we have found is neglect of compliance. So you have companies that know about the commission, they know about the act, but they just don't see any reason to comply. It's like, oh, what would they do? Like, it's just another government body that has been set up. So, and the only way to curb that in practical terms and in all honesty is strong enforcement measures. That is actually what companies actually listen to. So what we have done now is when we initially started, because we also had to train the ecosystem on data protection, we took an approach where if we see that a company has actually breached the law, we would call you in, we would do sort of a remedial process. We will investigate, but in addition to investigation, we also do a remedial process where we take you through all your activities and how to comply with the law, and then issue just a remedial fee. And when I mean remedial fee, I mean that it's something way lower than under the Act we can actually fine you for. So under our Act, we can fine you for 2% of your annual gross revenue in the preceding financial year. People that are very familiar with the GDPR probably understand this to an extent. So we will bring them in, and then we will just issue remedial fees if we find them liable. But now we are actually taking strong enforcement actions, and we have actually fined big tech companies and international companies in the telecom space regarding data protection breaches. And honestly, those fines alone, they have done more awareness for us than any of the initiatives that we have actually implemented. So that's one thing that we're taking to deal with the low level of the neglect of compliance. Another interesting thing that we did recently is we conducted a 3 to 4 month exercise where we looked at certain sectors in Nigeria: the insurance sector, the gaming sector, the financial sector, and then 2 other key sectors. And we came up with over 1,000 companies that we found were not in compliance with our act. We then issued a public notice identifying all these companies and giving them a directive to do certain things to put their acts in compliance, and to do this within a time period, 21 days. And if they don't do that, we would then take strong investigative actions. And what this has done, honestly, has had a ripple effect. We've had so many companies coming to the commission just asking for them certain questions on how to comply. We have had companies that have complied immediately. They have registered, they have filed their audits, they have put all their measures in place, taking all measures in place to ensure that they're complying with it. And that has had a significant effect in ensuring compliance within the ecosystem. The 4th one would be funding, and that's something that, because the commission is still new and we haven't been able to generate as much funding as we need to perform at an optimal level, we don't have enough funding to take as much nationwide initiatives as we would want to take, or to be able to carry out more in-depth investigative procedures. But I know that with time and as we grow, this would happen. And one thing we're doing is working with international development partners to see how we can work together for them, to see how we can work together for them to be able to provide funding and also just technical support to assist us in carrying out our mandates. So those are the 4 main challenges that we are facing at the Commission. Now, the next part of your question, which is how we really deal with big tech companies. The simple answer, honestly, is strong enforcement measures. There's a recent company that we investigated for over the course of 1 year on unlawful cross-border data transfer, putting harmful images of children online, and profiling and behavioral advertising and profiling without seeking consent. And we issued a fine against them, but they were not satisfied with this fine, so they actually approached the courts, which you can do under our law, for a judicial review of the decision. But as of today, they are now back to us regarding settlement, because we were able to defend it in court to the point that they realized that, okay, you can't bypass the laws. You cannot actually bypass a regulator that is actually doing the work and has been able to provide sufficient evidence as to why you have violated the law. And based on this, they are now trying to seek ways to actually comply with the law and even do things that would help the Commission's mandate, such as conducting nationwide awareness initiatives to be able to train people on data protection. So that's really how we're dealing with big tech companies. We're ensuring that we're issuing out strong enforcement measures, but also still bringing them to the table when they actually want to collaborate in relation to technical support and training of the Commission staff, and also just providing mediums for us to be able to carry out our mandates.
No.
Thank you.
I think let me leave it there. Maybe let's give a round of applause to our panelists for all the great insights that they've given us.